Members, we're going to take a moment to recognize today as 9/11, and we're going to go first, if we can, to Representative Eklund, if he can unmute and begin.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker and members, 19 years ago this morning, we all witnessed an event that shook our nation to its core. We all remember where we were when we saw the attacks on television or heard the news about them. The attack on New York City that day served as an attack on all of us Americans. And following that, the world saw us all come together in an unmatched show of resiliency and unity. While our hearts were hurting for those who lost their lives in this tragedy, our hearts were also strong with pride in our response. Strangers looked out for one another, putting their lives on the line as part of their patriotic duty to these United States of America. That day, 2,977 people were killed, including 343 firefighters and 71 law enforcement officers. Nearly 2 decades later, the first responders still with us continue to face ongoing health challenges as a result of their heroic efforts on September 11th. In the following weeks, months, and years, members of our armed forces answered the call to service so that justice could be delivered. We can never repay these men and women and their families for their bravery and sacrifice. And today, on this solemn anniversary, we take time to recognize them. Our great nation will be forever grateful to the first responders who arrived on scene that day to take action in a situation no one could possibly fully trained or prepared for. These brave folks started their days as police officers, firefighters, and paramedics, but ended their days as heroes. While I'm confident none of us will ever forget these horrific events, we must also remember what defines us: resiliency, unity, a resolve to overcome insurmountable challenges. As we look back on the events of September 11th and honor those who, during this tragedy today, especially during the difficult times we can currently find ourselves in, I hope we can all commit to looking deep within all of us to remember what we're all capable of as Americans, the same way we did following the tragedy that fateful morning. Thank you, Madam Speakers and members.
Representative Nash.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, members. I do remember where I was 19 years ago today. I didn't know what had happened because I was on an airplane flying into Washington, D.C. It was like a normal every other day. My boss and I started off at the airport and got on a plane and took off. And for those of you that fly a lot, you can kind of tell the rhythm and temper of an airplane when it begins to slow down and you glide into the landing, and it's something that becomes very routinized for you. Well, that didn't happen. We were put down very quickly. And as is almost a reflective reflex, we stand up and we turn on our phones because that's what you do when you land. My phone rang immediately, and it was my wife who had been redialing again and again and again and again because she thought I was dead. I was supposed to be landing in D.C., and she thought that our plane had been one of the ones that had been hijacked and would have been run into the ground. My business partner was having the same conversation with his wife, and we got off the airplane somewhat stunned. We watched as other people were getting similar phone calls, and we walked out into the concourse where they have televisions that were hanging down as they always do, and it was the news, and it was pictures of things burning, planes flying into the World Trade Center, planes then flew into the Pentagon, and then crashed into a field in Pennsylvania. We recognized very clearly that we were not going to be flying home, nor would we be flying anywhere else. So we split up. I went and got our bags. My boss went and got a rental car. Rental cars were in short supply, and because we traveled so much, we had that special card that says you can show up anytime you want and take any car you want. So he did. And we took about 3 other people with us, and we made a very long drive home. That day, we've got 5 perfect strangers in a car. You would normally assume that we would be talking to one another, and we did not say really more than a handful of words. We would answer phone calls from loved ones, and we drove, deposited people, and drove some more, deposited more people, and then drove home, got to the airport, picked up my truck, and went home. Hugged my family. I'm struck by what happened that day, but also struck by what happened a week later. My boss and I got on another airplane a week to the day. The flight crew said, hey, everybody line up on one side of the airplane because we want to show everybody that the plane is full. It wasn't. It wasn't full at all. We flew to New York City to do a speaking engagement there, and we got to the hotel, stashed our bags, and walked a couple of miles to Ground Zero. And as you got closer to Ground Zero, you could smell the burn of the building and the bodies and the stench of death that was there. And that was really something to take in and sort of think about. As we were walking too, we saw police and firefighters and military, and we stopped to thank each one of them because they all knew somebody or they themselves had rushed towards the danger that day. That's what first responders do. Police, firefighters, the Port Authority, EMTs were all rushing towards danger, and we just let them know that we were grateful, and I'm still grateful to this day. So we got to Ground Zero, and we were there, and we saw the pictures that you all remember of people posting things on chain link fences of people who were missing or people who had died. Can you help us find this person? And you know, my boss is not a very emotional person. He's kind of a big grizzly bear, but he was crying. We all were. And I recount this story to you to tell you I remember vividly that we didn't care if you were Republican or Democrat. We were all Americans for a very long time. And we'd do anything for each other. We honored those that ran towards danger. I just want to remind you how great that was, that we honored those people, because a lot of them died in the buildings. A lot of them died in the Pentagon. When the 2 towers came down, my friend Darren called me. He goes, "You're never going to believe what happened." And he said that they were just falling down. That was a bad day for America. And I will tell you that every flight, and I fly a lot, every flight that I've gotten on since then, I think about that day, every single day. And 19 years is a long time. You know, I've got kids that are now 19. My wife was pregnant with one of them. It's kind of an interesting reminder. But please don't forget these 19 years forward, what happened that day to our country, because it was a declaration of war, and we all became very, very close. You saw someone that needed something, you went and helped. You'd stop and you'd thank a cop or a firefighter or an EMT, Representative Hewitt. You'd thank people who were there serving our fellow man. Let's not forget that today, because we need to thank those people on a daily basis. Because while we and the people that were at Ground Zero were running away, they were running into the fire. They were climbing the stairs to get people out, and a lot of them didn't make it. So for me, as you can tell, this is an emotional day. It's kind of hard when your spouse calls you thinking that you're dead. So let's kind of embrace this day. And it's very ironic that we're here on this day, and I appreciate, Madam Speaker, you letting us talk about this, because America is still in need of remembrance and healing for this event. We are still in need to remember and thank those people who rush into danger for us every single day. So I encourage you to lock this away in your heart and make this a part of your consciousness, and do not forget what happened this day 19 years ago. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Representative Hewitt.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Representative Nash and Representative Eklund. Those were wonderful words. 19 years ago today, I got up in the morning, got the boys ready to go to kindergarten. Well, one ready to kindergarten, another one to daycare. And we heard the news. And I had my wife drop the kids off, and I went right into LifeLink that day. It was the strangest day of my whole work history because we didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know if I kissed my kids for the last time. We had no idea. None of us did. The police officers, the paramedics, the firefighters, because we didn't know what was going to happen here in Minnesota. We were scared. What was going on in New York was everything you just heard. There's something about people that are working as first responders, police officers, firefighters, medics and EMTs, and even those that are first responders from home. This career does not choose, you don't choose it, it chooses you. And your DNA is programmed that when people are running from a scene, you're running in. You don't care about your own safety. You don't think for 1 minute about your kids, which is just ridiculous. But that's what these people are programmed to do. And we've seen it during the 9/11 attacks in New York, and we see it every day. And we have to remember what they give up for this. I mean, it really does, and I don't want to get too emotional here, but Representative Nash hit it right on the head. They give up so much and their families pay so much for this. I had the opportunity to go to the 9/11 site with a number of my colleagues on a trip when it was first, it's still in construction, but a lot of the names are there of our brothers and sisters that perished in that situation. And there's very few times in your life, and all of you know them, when they're surreal. One day when I walked on the House floor, that was surreal. But this time was different when I saw that. This time I could only compare it to the first time I went to the Vietnam Memorial and seen my brother's name on that wall. That was a surreal moment, and when I went to the 9/11, that was surreal. I want to remember those in New York that died 19 years ago, but I also want you to know we have members in our own chamber here that answer that call every night. Representative Johnson, Representative Grossel, Representative Navani, Representative Backer, and to my surprise, and she kept this quiet from us, Representative Sandstead is a firefighter for her community. So that's pretty neat that we do have members, but all of us are like that. We're all called to serve. So this is a very emotional time for me. I remember those. I had a few friends that did die in 9/11, but I have friends that died between now and 9/11 that have answered the call to serve. Today, we're seeing the same thing. Regardless where you sit on the COVID argument, first responders, when they get the call for someone not breathing, run into that house and do everything they can. And we've had first responders come down with this bad disease. So we're seeing it today by first responders putting their own safety aside and taking care of us. So I really I'm not able to do this anymore because of our great job here, but next time you see one of us, one of the first responders, the police officers, the paramedics, the firefighters, the EMTs, say thank you. And today I ask you to pray for them or give them a thought. Madam Speaker, I ask for a moment of silence to recognize 9/11.
Members, please join me for a moment of silence to remember all those who lost their lives on 9/11.